Welcome to the first in our three-part Virtual Excursions training program. My name's Jackie Randalls, and I've coordinated this program for national delivery as part of my role managing Inspiring Australia in New South Wales. For those new to Inspiring Australia, it's the national strategy for public engagement with STEM. We work with hundreds of community partners to connect scientific researchers to big audiences. And today's training is all about doing just that in the virtual world. It will be produced and delivered by Fizzics Education, Sydney Science Education, and Refraction Media. And I'd like to acknowledge support from the New South Wales Office of the Chief Scientist and Engineer and Inspiring Australia's state programs in New South Wales, the ACT, Queensland, Western Australia, and South Australia.
Thanks, Ben. That was a very handy segue from Jackie B, because I'm actually going to talk about how you would do a virtual tour of a nuclear reactor. So great to be talking with you all again. My name's Heather Catchpole. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Refraction Media. We're a STEM specialist content company. So I do presenting, but I work a lot more on the kind of production, design and development side of things. We work a lot with students and career changes on careers resources, but we also consult with cooperative research centres, the Association of Deans of Science, Google, ANSTO, and many of the Australian universities. So I'm going to talk about, we started Refraction Media 7 or 8 years ago, and one of the most fun and challenging jobs that I got to do was to work with ANSTO on the development of their virtual tour experience. I'm just going to start with a short video that we created as part of this tour, and just share my screen and start strong, as Jackie B said.
You're about to go on a journey into the world of atoms. A world that forms the building blocks of everything in the universe. From the mind-boggling distances of space to the wonder of the world around us. We are formed from complicated components that are far, far smaller than the eye can see. From the billions of different cells that make up the myriad of life on this planet, to the DNA that forms the blueprint of our genetic code, and even further into the atomic world. Here, electrons travel at just under the speed of light. Protons and neutrons are bound strongly together by nuclear forces. Billions of atoms fit into a space no larger than the head of a pin. Welcome to the amazing world of ANSTO. Our journey begins here at Opal, Australia's only research reactor. Come with us now and explore this story into the very core of a nuclear reactor.
So you'll have seen there that we wanted to kind of start big and then look at what the experience was going into a nuclear reactor. So there's obviously quite a few problems that you might come across when trying to tour a nuclear reactor. One of those is you just can't get into that. Opal is Australia's only research reactor, and its main task is to create medical radioisotopes and also doped silicon. But there's a lot of preconceptions about nuclear reactors as a whole. And what we wanted to do was really look at the main area of research, which is environmental health research at those very super small atomic scales. So not many people know that the cage above the reactor that you saw there was actually built because of international requirements after 9/11 that said, just in case a plane happens to fall down from the sky and hit the reactor, please build a cage on top of it just in case. So there was a lot that we found out about going there and doing that. So one of the most fun things that I had to do was to don the protective gear, take videographers into the reactor itself. I took an extreme videographer who specialised actually in extreme skiing, tied him up to the cage, which then slides above the reactor, and we filmed a flyover as we went down, and he said that it was one of the most thrilling experiences that he had in his life before he then went on and did some more extreme skiing videography later. So really amazing to get that access and to have that experience. We then used that flyover that we had, the video that we had there, along with the original engineering drawings of the reactor, to basically rebuild the reactor as an animation, as a 3D animation. So there was a lot of components, and you'll see in that final product that some of the video was in there, some of the animation was in there. There was a lot that kind of went together to that. I'm just going to take you through how that was then broken down, and over the next 6 years, how that's been used by ANSTO to create a virtual experience and just allow them to be very, very adaptable about what different pieces that they created. So I'll just pop you on to share screen again. So originally we thought of this as a virtual tour. It was aimed at across different audiences. The final product that you're seeing here focused a lot on e-learning, and it's been used quite a lot in e-learning resources and packaged up in many, many different ways. Some of those have been packaged up and available offline. I know a couple of people were talking about the problems in accessing very in-depth, high-quality resources like that. Others have been used in some of the live experiences, and it's also been used in the physical tours as well. So, as I say, what we wanted to do is we wanted to create that very in-depth, small scale to look at what ANSTO and the Opal Research Reactor do best, is to look at materials at those small scales. So we developed a lot of animation around what it is to look at things at that scale. Of course, if you're going to go into Reactor and explore the experience of being in a reactor, one of the things that you want to do is to be able to control it yourself. So we did build a control room where we could control the pool temperature, the water flow, the neutron flux, and the radiation levels. If any of you have ever played with nuclear reactors before, you'll know that as soon as that pool temperature goes up, you will go into a critical mass. And that allowed us to also show what happened. There's all these safety procedures. And in that space down the bottom was a little video player that we could allow kids to genuinely interact with this. This work came off the back of developing interactive resources for tablet and iPad. So we were able to take some of that interactivity and build that in. Of course, when that was being presented, the researchers were able to sort of look at those and play with those and create those interactions. So important, I think what Jackie B said is there's no point having just great resources if you aren't able to create those stop periods where you then look at, well, you know, what do you think about this, and reflect on what's going to happen before you as you do these things. This is the internal view of the reactor itself. We created, you can see the bridge there where we stood as we were able to go do the flyover filming of that. We also took some 3D photos of the reactor space. One of the great, very, very easy ways to create a virtual tour of your space. You literally don't need any other technology apart from a camera which you can stick on a pole and will take square shots of the room around you. That then can be glued together basically as a frame and give you the sense of being inside that space. So there's a couple of the different frames of that 3D experience of being inside the reactor itself. We were then able to overlay that with different touch points which could talk about different elements, what the job was of different pieces of equipment there, so that the audience can sort of deep dive into different sections. We did also create an animation of the research reactor itself. So this is all built on the original engineering drawings. Really fascinating to see what goes into building a reactor. We were then able to highlight different areas to show what was going on at those different spaces. You'll see the pipes going down on the left where the radioisotopes are developed, and down the bottom there is where ingots of silicon are put down and doped, which means that they have another neutron added to that, and that allows that silicon to then be used in many of the equipment we use today, like mobile phones and so on. We also took a look at the building and the spaces that you aren't able to access as a public, and so we could just show some of the infrastructure there and the different buildings that they had as well. we brought this all together. There are a lot of different components, and there are a lot of imagery, a lot of animations, a lot of these 3D images, a lot of text. And what we wanted to do is then, as you always should do, think about your audience. What does your audience want to know? They want to know what radiation is. They want to know, how different parts of that work, how nuclear medicine works. So we pulled it together in those different sections so they could then go off and explore different areas like that. We also pulled it together as a map view, so you can just pull out on different sections. Each of those koala, joey, kuari are actually neutron diffractometers, reflectometers, and you can then press on those and watch different animations of all of the different jobs that they do. For example, when you dive into the nuclear medicine area, you can see how nuclear medicine is used. You can see how what happens in a medical scan, how the radioisotopes are then taken off and done that. There was a gallery and a whole lot of different elements pulled together there. Here's the research reactor from the flyover in its beautiful blue colours again. You can pop into the panorama area and more. So one of the things that we learnt from doing that is there's a couple of different experiences that you can offer. You can offer the completely immersive experience where people can choose to explore the area themselves, view nice pictures, pop into galleries. We also learnt that there's a great value in being able to pull all of that collateral apart. A lot of the materials that we produced are now used in the Discovery Centre, which is a physical space where tours can go and kids can go and do a lot of chemistry and things like that. So different elements were able to be pulled out and work in that space itself. We could develop sections for promoting the tour, so we could actually use that in marketing as well. A lot of the ways that it's used now is actually in Meet a Scientist video conferencing. So by introducing a scientist to talk about their particular research area, and this is another great thing that I thought Jackie B talked about, is in your video conferencing having those different roles. So the Meet a Scientist allows people to come in and find out what the job is like, and then the educator could then say, oh, look, okay, someone's just thrown in the word neutron diffractometry, so apologies, yes, I know it's a terrible term, but the educator could then say, it so happens that we have this animation here that explains that diffractometry. You can link that to your Year 12 physics and find ways to really connect with your audience there. Great to see Helen. Hi, Helen from. I hope I've done it justice. It's she's certainly working on one of those instruments there. So good to see Wombat. Absolutely some terrific research, and we learnt so much from putting that together. And it just has been very long-lived content, which is often quite hard to do. So to find ways to then utilise your content in different ways, as Jackie B said, you can do your own thing with your document camera. But you can also utilise what your organisation has and just think about how you can use those in different ways as well. I know that one of the ways they are using these today is developing worksheets which link to these resources so they can then share those with the students as well. So I'm going to just throw into questions, I think, Jackie.
Yep, we have a question from Jackie. Has this virtual tour had much engagement? Do you think elements of it would have worked as a live presentation somehow?
Yeah, so it is. It initially was a virtual tour where you could register in the same way that you registered for the physical tours. There was some concern then, as I think many people have a concern between going from physical to virtual. We've all been forced virtual now, but there's a sort of sense of like, oh, is this going to encroach on what I do in the kind of physical sense as well? They've actually found that the audience has just really grown with that. I know they're working with Asia Connections, which is works to live stream to schools all throughout the Asia region. So they've been able to take the reach from just the kind of southern Sydney area and schools that were coming up from Wollongong, and are now reaching schools all across Australia and into regional Asia Pacific as well. Any other questions, Jackie?
Paul asks, how are teachers using the resources? Are they using it in their own units of work, or are they using your full resource unit of work from start to finish?
Yeah, absolutely. So it maps, one of the things that was really important when we shifted from the original virtual tour concept and into developing an e-learning platform and e-learning resources out of that was, if it's not mapped to the curriculum, it's not going to work for the schools. Fortunately, there's a lot of Year 11, Year 12 physics and chemistry, earth and environmental science to map to. So we took the approach then of like, what do the teachers and the students need most of all, and then taking segments of that. So we chopped up bits of the video, we took, sections of the tour and pulled those resources together and showed the audience how that's going to map to the curriculum, and just make it really easy for them to then download that and use that.
Thank you for joining us for the Virtual Excursions training, supported by Inspiring Australia. You can find more information and top tips on the Virtual Excursions Australia website.